everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Elizabeth, and I run the blog lifefromtheviolasection.com, where I share my favorite practice tips, general advice, and tech for musicians. Today, I wanted to share all of the features that are in the top bar in the app Forscore. So if you don't already know, Forscore is a very popular sheet music reading app for iOS only, so this is specific to Apple devices. If you hear meowing, my cat Pacho is playing right outside the room, and he likes to run around with a toy in his mouth and just meow with it. It's really fun. So you may have already seen that I made one of these videos, I think in 2021. And of course, like most apps, the top bar has changed a little bit in that time, and I've received a lot of requests to make an updated one. So here you go. I hope that this is helpful. And if you have any other questions, please let me know down below. I'm always happy to help. So diving right in, when you open Forscore, it usually brings you right up to your music. So if you tap on the screen, mostly just in the center, it will bring up the top bar that I'm referring to. So we're gonna go from left to right today. The first one looks like a half note. When you tap on it, it gives you all of your scores. You can sort by composer. I like to do all scores because it's alphabetical, and I generally know what I've named any piece that I'm looking for within Forscore. So that is my preferred method of organization. Within this, you can import and edit a bunch of scores as well. Then we have something that looks like an open book. These are your bookmarks. I don't really use this very much. I know what I'm looking for and how to find it. But this is helpful for literally the piece that I'm in right now, which is just a compilation of all 6 Bach cello suites. So I think for a lot of us, if you're going to these and referring to them often, it would be very helpful to make a bookmark for each different suite. You could even do it for each and every different movement. That can save you a lot of time in the long run. Next up, we have a little hamburger menu, those 3 horizontal lines, and these are your set lists. So I have a whole video on Forscore set lists. If you'd like to learn more, go ahead and click on that to get a more in-depth overview. Next, we have a cloud. This shows you different cloud services that you have connected to Forscore. You can connect this with Files, the built-in file management software. There are also Dropbox, Box, and I use Google Drive often, so I've connected that in the past. There are also like sheet music service providers like Music Notes, Noteflight, Virtual Sheet Music, and some others, so that if you purchase music from those sites, you can kind of automatically import it to Forscore. All right, next up is kind of the big one, which is where the title is shown. So first, within that box, we have a little settings wheel. So it shows the display mode. It really just shows different display options. So you can change how you view it on the screen in different orientations and in different circumstances. And you can kind of get different modes. We'll just put a screenshot up on the screen and I'll label what each of these things are. I personally think it's really confusing that they're just icons because I don't always know what each of these things is going to mean. I believe if you have Forscore Pro, you can also see the different page flipping options and turn those different gestures on through this area. Okay, next up we see the title, and if you tap on that, it brings up the properties and metadata for the score that you're in. So you can see the title, composer, and tags that I've added in. You can also add it to set lists, attach or view any audio that is attached to this score. There's a whole MIDI section that I have never gone into before. And then you can also see your libraries and change what libraries this is a part of. So if you want to change the title of your piece, this is where you go. So back to the score, you tap on the title, and then it brings this up and you can edit any of the metadata that you want to. There's also this little down arrow right by the X, and you can share, fetch, or open a new tab in Forscore. Next up, within this middle box, we have the 3 little dots. I use this a lot when I go to share a score. So first we have a little eye that again brings up the properties and metadata. We have a little flag so that you can flag the piece if you want for organizational purposes. Then we have the share icon. You can share the PDF, annotated PDF, or a Forscore file. I usually share annotated PDFs because usually when I'm sharing these, it's for notes that I've written in a lesson. No matter which one you want to share, you can press on the 3 dots. You can choose the range of pages that you want to share, which is so helpful if we're working out of a book or a big document like this one is. And you can also change the aspect ratio of the PDF that you're sending. Next up in the 3 dots, we have show in library. So that will just show you, it'll just kind of highlight it. So if you've lost it in the past, you can kind of just see how it's organized. You can open a new tab within Forscore. You can open a new window so that you can view things side by side. Very helpful if you're looking at 2 different editions and trying to make comparisons. Next, you can add the score to a set list, And finally, you can delete the whole score. Don't press that if you don't mean to, but it will ask you to confirm before it actually deletes anything. Okay, next up is one of my favorite parts of the top bar, the annotation tool. So you can begin annotating by tapping on it like I just did, or you can just begin writing on your score and you will just be able to annotate. It will just revert to whatever you've used the last time you annotated. So the last time I wrote in a score, I used this red pen, but if you want to change that, then I usually just get into annotating mode like that. I press undo and then I choose whatever I actually want to use, and I just find that to be easiest. So again, through the top bar, you can get to annotating by this little squiggly line that looks like a pen. All right, so this part is still mostly the same as the last time I showed this, but on the very left of the annotation bar, we have either symbols or stamps. I can never remember which one this is. I think this is stamps. They're very similar. They're just things that you're gonna put into your music. So this is a bunch of different symbols, note values, rests, dynamics, things that you might want to add to your music. To the right of that are shapes, and these are things like slurs, crescendos, decrescendos, a staff, a repeat sign. I even made my own, which is a white box, so that if I want to erase a ton of stuff all at once, I can easily do that in a PDF. Not really erase isn't the best word, but if I want to cover something up and create a blank slate in a printed PDF, that's how I do it. Next up, we have the actual pens, so you can edit these however you want. You can change the size, color, hue, saturation, brightness, transparency, and so on. You can add another one by pressing the plus button. I don't want another one because it's already getting kind of cluttered in my mind, so you can easily delete different tools if you don't want them. Next, to the right, we have a ruler, and you can move this along the screen. Then you can just draw a straight line. This is really helpful if you want to draw a new staff in your music, or really just any kind of straight line. Like if this whole line of music is going to be a down bow, then you could just kind of do that, and then you can see it looks really, really clean. Or even if you're a pianist and you want to do a pedal marking, you can kind of do that this way. So get rid of the ruler, and then you can add the little notches and brackets. Sorry, that's not beautifully done, but just an idea to get you started. All right, to the right of the ruler, we have this selection box. You can select any annotations and manipulate them in a few different ways. So you can duplicate it and move it around. You can copy it, cut it. You can edit what you've written a little bit. So let me show you that for real. So I just wrote a down bow and an up bow. Pacha's back to playing again. Then I'll select them and we can change how they look. I don't think these settings were as robust as they are now the last time that I made this video, so I'm glad to see there have been some updates there. Okay, we're just gonna erase that now. Okay. So after that selector, there is a text box. I don't use this very often, but if you have any official directions, or if you're like adding a coda or a repeat or something, this could be helpful to make it look a little bit more official. Then we have the eraser tool. So if I write something, grab the eraser, it just goes exactly where my pen goes. You can change the size of this. Sometimes it's a little bit too large, but I've just kept the size the same the whole way through, honestly. Then we have what looks like a trash button, and it clears the whole page. It should not clear the whole score, but just the page / just the layer of the page that you're working on. Then we have the undo button. So if I press that a bunch of times, you'll see the different things that I've done. Then we have the redo button. Now we're all caught up. And then finally, these multi-boxes, these are layers. So you can add a whole score layer, or you can add layers just page by page. This is super helpful for me as a teacher. When I'm working on the same piece with multiple students, I can create different score layers with different students' names, and then I can remember the specific fingerings that they're doing. Anything that helps them doesn't have to be distracting in the next lesson with someone else. Then we have this little hand tool. This just kind of changes the palm rejection, I believe. Yeah, when I turn that off, it just lets me use my finger instead of only using my finger for tapping, if that makes any sense. Next, we have these left and right arrows. This changes the page, or if you're in like the half page mode like I am, it just goes from the top of the page to the bottom and then to the next top, the next bottom, the next top, and the bottom. This is super helpful if you're doing a lot of annotations to just navigate through the score. So then finally, the little hamburger menu here lets you drag the annotation bar so that you can see exactly where you need to on the score. So we'll press this little check mark to save everything and leave. Also, on the left, we have this blue X. If you do this, it'll cancel everything that you did. And it's one way of leaving. The check mark is what I always press, and that just saves everything that you did in the annotation mode. Okay, so back to our original top bar. We have a little magnifying glass. You can search for any score that you want in here. After that, we have a little metronome. It looks like an old-fashioned metronome, so hopefully that's pretty clear, but it's a pretty simple metronome in here. You can listen to it, see it, or do both at the same time. The visible one, it kind of pulsates the edges of the score. There's also a built-in drone, and my volume is not up, so let's turn that up. There we go. And you can manipulate the drone in a couple different ways. I personally just prefer to have a standalone app for that, but if you're in a pinch, this is good enough. Then finally, we have a tuner, and it's just very basic, just to get the job done. Also, I never noticed this before, but when you change what tool you're using up here, the icon actually changes. So if you're using the drone a lot, it'll look like a tuning fork, and the tuner kind of looks like just the tuning bar that moves, whether or not it's in tune. I'm not really sure what that's called. I've never really had a name for that. But I always just leave it on metronome, so it always just looks like a classic metronome to me. That's a cool feature. Okay, and then finally we have this little briefcase, and there are a ton of different options here, and a lot of them are ones that we've already gone over. So you can get to annotation here, you can create links, which is helpful if you have repeat signs. Personally, I overthink links way too much. It just boggles my mind for some reason, but it's basically like when you get to a certain point, when you go forward, it'll take you to like the link. So you choose, okay, when I reach this point, I want to go here, and maybe you're going from page 4 to page 2 because you're doing a repeat. So it'll take you back there even though you're going forward. For some reason though, my brain cannot figure out how exactly these work, but I know they're helpful for a lot of people. Personally, what I do is I just duplicate pages when there's, if it's a repeat sign that just goes back one page, I just go back one page with my pedal. That's easy enough for me. If it's multiple pages, then I just duplicate however many pages I'm going to play a second time, and then I put those after the repeat sign. So I just press the pedal and it takes me next to where I want to go. And if there's anything that I don't want to see with the repeat sign, like with those duplicated pages, then I just use that big white box that I made in the shapes, and I just cover up anything that I don't want to see that would be confusing. So that's links, or that's how I don't use links. Then we have buttons, and these can be super helpful if there's a certain way that you always practice this section. Maybe if you're preparing for orchestra auditions and there's this one excerpt where when I reach this point, I always need to use a drone, or I'm gonna use the metronome at this speed all the time here. So you can create kind of little shortcuts within the score for yourself so that you just press a button and the metronome comes right up at the tempo that you need. That can be really handy, but honestly, I can't be bothered with it. Sorry. But I'm sure that would be so helpful for a lot of people. It's just, I'm just gonna open up my metronome app and do things I'm used to. I don't know, that's my workflow. Then we have rearrange, which is where if your pages are out of order, you can move them around. Then we have crop, and I use this a lot when I first import a score. If it is a little bit too zoomed out for your liking, you can zoom in however you want. So just to utilize all the space that you can, you could crop in like that and you're able to see the music a bit better. Next is share, exactly like we had earlier in the top bar, so I won't go into that. Then we have different ways to add scores from different stores, services. You can even scan within the app. Personally, I like using TurboScan. I just find that the quality of the scans is a lot higher, and you can even start from a template. Maybe if you like composing by hand on a tablet, that's one way that you can do it. Then we have a piano that you can pop up. if you just want to hear some things tried out on a little mini piano. You can record within this app. Q is for ensembles, and I've never tested this out with anyone, but I think that for a lot of ensembles, it's very helpful. So that's how you find all of those different options. Then we have the dashboard, which is basically just stats and analytics. I never use this, but if you want something for that, just something kind of basic, that's somewhere that you can find it if you're always using Forscore for all of your music. Otherwise, if you want to get really heavily into stats, Andante Practice Journal is a great resource for that, where you log the time that you spend practicing each and everything. You can create notes, and there are other really cool built-in features. I've looked at it before on the channel, but that was a couple years ago, so there are probably some new updates in that app that are not reflected in the video. So then we have sync. So if you want to sync it with iCloud, this is where you do that. Personally, I haven't done that. But I try to upload my most important scores with their annotations to Google Drive occasionally. Then you can do a backup. Then we see support, just kind of shows you what version of the app, how much room it takes up, and then it gives you lots of resources over there. And then finally, we can get to settings. So there's a whole lot over here. I went into just a little bit of this in the video where I reviewed all of the different face gestures and different gestures that you can use in Forscore Pro, which was a very interesting experiment. But I know that some people have good luck with it. I didn't really. Sorry, spoiler alert for that video. But I'm gonna stick with my pedal. So that didn't work too well for me, but that's okay. It does for other people, and I don't really need that. I'm not going to go into all of these settings today just because there is a lot there and it can get really in-depth, but if you were confused about any settings or if you would just like an overview of them, let me know and I can make a separate video on that. So that covers the Forscore top bar from left to right. I hope that that was helpful with the new updates that have been created in the last 3 or so years since I made my last video. If there's anything that you're still confused about, or if anything looks different on yours, let me know, at least within the next like month or so. After like a month or so, I don't know, they could change, they could do a whole overhaul and make it look completely different. I don't know anything. I'm not in touch with anyone from Forscore's team, so I'm just saying. Apps change occasionally, so if you're watching this in the first like couple weeks after I put this up and yours looks totally different, let me know, because I don't know why it would look different, but I'm interested. So I hope that this is helpful for you. If you have any other questions, just let me know down below. And if you'd like to see some of this information written out, you can always check out my blog post. It's always linked down in the description box. And sometimes I have a couple more like pieces of information and other remarks in there, and links are nice and concise in there as well. So always be sure to check that out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.